Okay, I'm guessing we have, I can see the number of participants going up. I'll give it a minute before I get started. Okay, so thank you for joining, everyone that's joined so far. So I've just got a brief agenda of what we plan to cover today. So just to introduce myself, my name's Sophie Lewis. I am the programme manager for our early careers programmes within DWS. So I'm just going to talk a little bit around what is asset management, do a bit of an overview of the different divisions we have, and just a bit of an overview as to what you can expect sort of navigating through a selection process at kind of undergraduate level and beyond. You're then going to hear from my colleague AMAR, who joined us as a graduate last year and now works in our real estate division. And then you're going to hear from Sarah around her experiences joining the technology graduate programme last year as well. We should have some time at the end to do Q&A, so if you could kind of hold back until then, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have at the end. So just to give you all a brief understanding, because I had no idea what asset management was before joining DWS in January this year. So it's essentially the management of investments on behalf of others, with the view to kind of growing those investments, growing a client's portfolio, and also mitigating risk. I'm not going to read word for word because I'm sure you can all see kind of what's up on the screen at the moment. One of the key mistakes that I think a lot of people make coming into this environment, they very much assume it's like an investment bank and that we do a very similar thing and that it's a similar work mentality to an investment bank. Is actually very different. So investment banks would sell financial products. That's essentially what they do to make their money. And where we differ is that we buy them on behalf of other individuals, and we kind of build and maintain those investment portfolios over often quite a substantial period of time. So who we are, DWS are a world-class asset manager. So we currently have assets of 859 billion euros. That is correct as of June this year. We are kind of, our majority shareholder is Deutsche Bank. So a few years ago, you may have come across Deutsche Asset Management, changed to DWS as of 2018. And we're very much scoping out a brand kind of as an independent manager away from the Deutsche Bank brand. There's a few statistics there. We have around 3,500 employees globally, and we are essentially investors. That is what we do as an organisation. So just to give you a brief understanding of the different facets within an asset manager, and this is a breakdown of the main divisions that we have within DWS. So we have our executive division, headed up by our CEO, Soka. So that includes HR, audit, strategy. Again, I'm not going to read, you can see from the list, but that's broadly what sits in that division. We then have our CFO division, which includes predominantly finance and then risk as well. COO division, which is operations, and then we have our investments division, which is kind of where a lot of the front office functions will sit. So it includes our traditional asset classes, so both active and passive investing. It includes alternative investments, which is where AMAR currently sits in his role in real estate, and he'll tell you a bit more about that later on. And some of the roles that you would typically find in an investment division include portfolio management, research, and trading. The next one along is our client coverage division. So that is essentially kind of sales and distribution. So what our coverage team do is they go out to investors and kind of get them to sort of buy, invest in portfolios that we would then manage on their behalf. And then finally, we have our product division, which is the newest of all the divisions within DWS. And what they do is essentially launch new financial products to the market, whilst obviously ensuring that they are fit for purpose and kind of fully compliant and within the regulatory requirements. So just a little bit around the early careers programs that we currently have at DWS. So these are the programs that I'm quite heavily involved in. They do run on a global scale. So typically we have graduates and interns in London, Hong Kong, Frankfurt and New York. There's three main programs. We run a summer internship each year, which is typically 9 to 10 weeks, depending on location. Generally, we use our summer intern program as a means to then hire into the graduate program the following year. So if you're a UK university student, for example, you might do your summer internship in between the second and final year of university. And then if it's successful, we would then offer you a place on the graduate position for the following year. So after you've completed your bachelor's degree. The thing I would stress with internships, particularly the shorter term ones, because I know there is a perception definitely in other industries that interns are kind of an excuse for companies to get some cheap labour or, you know, have you work for more or less free over the summer months. Summer internships are fully paid at exactly the same rate as a graduate programme. So I would say in that sense, they're very accessible to the majority. And it's definitely something that's worth considering. If there is an industry that you are looking to go into, then definitely have a look at doing an internship first, because it can be a really good foot in the door. In addition, so we have our analyst graduate programme. That's what AMAR came through. So it starts in July each year, and typically will cover the main sort of front office, typically revenue generating functions. So that would include traditional investment classes, alternatives, product and or coverage. The programme is a global one, so it's a 4-week training period, then followed by either a series of rotations where you're kind of placed permanently into a role with the business, depending on where you are. And then we also have our technology programme, which Sarah will tell you a bit more about. Again, it starts in July each year. It's actually run by Deutsche Bank because they have a much larger intake than we do. It includes 2 fairly lengthy rotations, and then our grads start their permanent roles in the September of the following year. So those are currently the programs that we have on offer. It does change slightly from year to year, but those are broadly the areas that we hire kind of graduates or kind of junior members of staff into. A little bit around what to expect. So this isn't necessarily a carbon copy of our application process, but it should give you an idea of roughly, you know, if you are applying for roles within this industry, kind of what the process might look like. So obviously you would start with an initial online application. CV may also include a covering letter. I'll cover a bit more shortly, but I'd say it's really, really vitally important that you get that right. A lot of companies will do online assessments, and that will typically be to sort of candidates that they like the look of or who meet their kind of eligibility criteria. They can cover a range of things. So you might have aptitude assessments that look at things like verbal reasoning, numerical reasoning. Some companies do a situational judgment test, and they tend to be like multiple choice, kind of what would you do in this situation. And then some companies will do an OPQ, which is an online personality questionnaire, and they're more to look at kind of traits and behaviours and sort of how well that aligns to the culture within the organisation. So they're just a few sort of things that you could be asked to cover as part of an online assessment. Application screening. So typically we have panels that are tasked with kind of reviewing the, you know, if there's testing involved, then obviously the test scores, but we also look at your work experience, your academics, any kind of extracurricular activities, and you know what a good employer should do is obviously look at that all holistically before deciding whether or not to progress the application. telephone interviews, or actually, particularly in a post-COVID world, I would say video interviews are becoming increasingly commonplace. They could be kind of anything from, you know, what are your motivations to wanting to work in this industry or this organisation. You might have some more technical questions. If it's, for example, a technology role that you've applied for, then we probably want to understand that you have a base level of knowledge. And you may find competency-based questions as well. So they will typically be kind of, give me an example of when you have displayed a particular kind of trait or behaviour. Depending on the size and scale of the organisation that you've applied to, you then may be asked to attend an assessment centre at the end. Not all companies do these. As I said, if it's a smaller company or they're, you know, hiring smaller numbers, they may just do interviews. But assessment centres are definitely more commonplace in sort of junior hiring, so anything at kind of grad level or below, and that could cover any number of things. So just a last kind of few little pointers from me. So my background is in kind of early careers recruitment, and I've seen a lot, believe me, over the years of people who have got it very, very right and people who've got it very wrong. I've touched on this already, but I can't stress enough how important it is to get your CV and that initial application right. Typos aren't acceptable when spell check is so accessible in this day and age. And also an issue that you will find is if your contact details are not correct in your application, we can't reach you and we can't therefore progress your application. So it sounds like common sense, but again, it is something that I see a lot creating an issue. And I've got a typo in that slide, which is really embarrassing, I've just noticed. Would say respond promptly and professionally at all stages. One of the most common issues I find is that people don't check their junk. A lot of kind of email providers will filter stuff if it's from an unknown email address. So I often get, you know, if applicants have missed the deadline for testing, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't see this, it went to my junk folder. If you know you're applying for multiple kind of roles and different processes, you need to be checking your spam regularly as well. Particularly if you're applying for a financial institution or anything with a kind of regulatory requirement, don't think, oh, I'll just give myself a few extra A stars at GCSE because that will look really good. Companies will do background checks, and if it's found that you have kind of not given a truthful representation of yourself in your application, that can result in offers being withdrawn. So just don't do it, it's not worth the risk. You should be prepared to answer questions on absolutely anything you've put on your CV. So even if it's just something in your kind of interest section that you think, oh, an employer's not going to look at that, just don't put anything in there that you're not prepared to back up in an interview situation, because again, it does happen. And it's just the worst thing to kind of be caught out in a situation like that. Would look at as a, you know, as an application process is very much a two-way thing. There's no point in trying to be the version of yourself that you kind of think we're looking to hire. So absolutely, by all means, be the best version of yourself, but don't try and kind of behave like someone you're not, because one, you'll get caught out very quickly, and two, you may end up in an organisation that's just not the right fit for you culturally, and that's not a great result for anyone involved. I'm not going to read the rest of the points because I'm just mindful of time, but I would just really say that preparation is really key. Obviously, we don't expect graduates or undergrads to have huge amounts of practical experience, but I think going into any competency-based interview, you should definitely have had a think about, okay, what are some things that I might have done either in university or any kind of part-time work I've had to date that might demonstrate a transferable skill that relates to this role. So just always worth just having a think about some examples, noting them down, and just being prepared to talk about them during the interview. So those are just some general points that should hopefully stand you in good stead. And I'm going to pass you over, because I've waffled on for far too long, to AMAR from our real estate division.
Thanks, Sophie. So just moving on to this slide here, just to give a brief sort of background to myself. as Sophie said, I'm currently an analyst in DWS real estate division. So that sits within the alternative investments division at DWS, working out of the London office. So just a quick background in terms of university, I studied economics, and it was during university where I sort of became interested in the financial services industry, and then kind of filtered that down to investment management, where I landed the 2019 summer internship at DWS, where I completed a couple rotations. The first was in real estate portfolio management, and then the second was in the traditional asset classes. So that was in equities portfolio management. I was fortunate enough to be invited back to the graduate scheme the following year with a focus on alternative investments, where I've then moved on to real estate investments full-time here. In terms of sort of motivations and why I kind of, why asset management sort of appealed to me, I think this is kind of key to get right on your application, understanding your own motivations, and then being able to, communicate that across well in any stage you are. So whether that's interview, phone interview, at an assessment center. But for me, in terms of why investment management and the sort of buy side sort of stood out was, the first was it's very dynamic. It's markets are constantly changing. Every day is completely different to the last, and that provides a constant opportunity to learn. So I think that's really unique, and something that I was looking for when I was exploring different career options. I think secondly was that it's quite frankly very important to the wider society and economy. It's the opportunity to make a significant contribution. On the one hand, you're effectively in the business of managing risk and return for clients, which ultimately represent savers like you and I, saving for sort of pensions, for example. And in this environment of ultra low interest rates that we found ourselves in, I think asset managers really have an important role to play to ensure that we can meet the sort of liabilities that we need to meet in a few years' time. And also we're responsible for deploying and allocating capital across the economy, and that's really driving investment, the multiplier effect, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of in your sort of economics courses, and ultimately sort of economic growth, job creation. I think investment managers are really key to that. Also, the ability to think analytically was very important to me, coming from a sort of economics quantitative background. I wanted to be in a role where you're constantly having to evaluate and analyze data in order to make rather simple decisions at the end of the day. Invest or not invest, and if invest, at what price should you invest it in? And I thought that was quite neat. In terms of why DWS, I think so Sophie's already sort of touched across that we've got capabilities across both alternatives and traditional. So it really gives you the opportunity to explore different areas of the organization, particularly in the summer internship. The main thing that I wanted was an experience in alternatives and experience in traditionals, because I knew there were so many different asset classes within investment management that you can potentially go into. And then that was really valuable, I think, to really filter down as to which asset class you'd want to specialize into. And then, of course, it's growing fast. So as Sophie said, we spun out of Deutsche Bank back in 2018. And so I really saw this as an opportunity to make a significant contribution. We've got the foundations of a really large organization, but at the same time, we've just split off from our parent company. And I think that really provides opportunity to be entrepreneurial, to be a part of something quite special in terms of the future growth journey here. I guess instead of just going through why real estate private equity appealed to me, if we move on to the next slide, I'll try not to sort of bore you, but in terms of what we do in sort of real estate, and this slide sort of summarizes what DWS does in alternatives. So, as Sophie said, we're split between active, passive, which lies within traditionals, and then alternatives, as you can see here, in which it's mainly private real estate where I work in. But then we've also got growing divisions across infrastructure, which includes both equity and debt, liquid real assets, which is investing in, for example, REITs and real estate securities, private equity and sustainable investments, which is both sort of growing divisions within our firm. Just moving on to the next slide quickly. I think, so in terms of what we do as a real estate investments business, we manage private equity funds that invest in real estate assets. So that includes across the entire asset class spectrum. So commercial, things like major offices, skyscrapers, logistics assets. So that's been a real hot sector in the last couple of years because of the growth of e-commerce, for example. Retail, shopping centres, and then also sort of residential, which is a key sort of strategy for us, having launched a few funds in recent years that focuses in on that. We have a kind of heritage from a European background with a lot of major retail funds that's managed out of Germany. So just moving on to the next slide, sort of focuses on what we do in Europe. So it's co-headquartered in London and Frankfurt with additional offices in real estate. It's quite important to ensure you have a local presence across the different regions, and where we don't, we have external operators which we partner up with in order to make sure we get that deal flow and ensure that we have asset managers on the ground that can make sure returns are actually being realized. So we have over 800 properties, 31.5 billion euros of assets under management, and the sort of risk spectrum that we operate in is actually primarily in core, what we call core and core plus, which is towards the lower risk side rather than the value add and opportunistic, where more of the smaller private equity funds would be focused in on, where they take a bit more risk. So that's what our sort of specialists are as private equity real estate investment managers. I guess that's just a brief whistle stops tour on real estate. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much, but just moving on to this slide here. In terms of my experience, I've done sort of spring insight programs, and I obviously did the summer internship and then followed on to the graduate. So I've been through all the different stages of sort of early careers, going through different sort of interview processes, and so I've kind of tried to summarize what I thought worked quite well for me. So I think the application really starts before you even send in your CV and cover letter and make that application. I think you need to really sort of sit down and ask yourself some questions and understand your own motivations for joining, because if you don't understand it yourself, how are you going to communicate that across to to the interviewer and the decision maker, the recruiter at the end of the day? And ultimately that's going to be the foundations upon which all of your answers are going to be based upon. So I think that's quite fundamental to make sure that you're joining the industry for the right reasons. I think you can always start learning straight away. You don't need an internship to start learning about it. There's so much material out there. I'm sure your university's got subscriptions to the FT, the Economist, that you can already start sort of getting involved in. I think focusing on what drives markets on a day-to-day basis. Start building up your technical skills. So, for example, if you're interested in real estate or private equity or one of these asset classes, financial modeling and valuation would be really valuable there, or even to demonstrate that you've started to learn about this and show that in your interviews. Sort of technical knowledge, so understanding, for example, how a DCF works, what the time value of money is, doing your own equity research and understand how bonds and equities are, how these markets work. I think those are the sort of technical questions that you're likely to get. So those are some things that I would focus on. And I would also say start actually doing investing for yourself. If not a real investment portfolio, you can set up your own practice trading account or something to test out your own investment ideas. Write down your own stock pitches. That's always a classic question as to just pitch me a stock that you're going to invest in. So make sure you've got a couple up your sleeve there. That would be quite good. And of course, if you're at university, joining investment societies would be quite a valuable thing to do. In terms of the CV and cover letter, Sophie's already said, any experience is good experience. You can show your transferable skills from jobs which probably on the surface don't seem directly applicable. But I think, so for example, at university, I did a volunteer tutoring scheme, which has nothing to do with sort of investing. I think we're just teaching maths to school students. And so, that was a good thing to sort of demonstrate communication skills, organizational skills, and that sort of stuff. I would prioritize, clarity and being concise in every part of your cover letter and CV. I think you have to keep in mind that somebody, maybe Sophie, will have to be reading through these and potentially, thousands of these. So I think the job is to make the recruiter's job easy, make them like you. And I think simple language is more effective than just rambling on. In terms of cover letter, if you're going for an investment role, I think you've probably heard this if you've been to sort of careers and stuff at university, where it's just keep it structured, paragraph and why me, paragraph and why the firm, and then why the industry. And this is where you can really kind of show off that you've done your research, that you've done your homework, quote a few figures from the investor relations website. That's always quite helpful. So if you've made it through to the interview stage, I think the number one tip is, if you've made it this far, you already have the sort of technical skills and you've demonstrated that quite well. This is also them evaluating how likable you are as a person, because I think ultimately you have to be a sort of team player. You may be sitting next to someone, for a long period of time in a day. So, make sure that you're personable. As you say, know your story, perfect your elevator pitch. And that really comes from your sort of the work that you've done pre-application, as to really understanding your motivations and your story and how you can communicate that across as to why this particular position is the one for you. In terms of group discussion, I would say being a team player is much better than being an overpowering leader. So make sure you include people into your discussions rather than just trying to take the conversation. That's never a good idea. Structure your answers quite well. So I always kind of use acronyms at the back of my mind. So things like STAR, situation, task, action, result. That's always quite helpful. If you have to do sort of investment case studies or analyze something, a piece of information, using SWOT, so strength, weaknesses, opportunity, threats is quite a good way to do it. And then finally, just, this is a two-way process. So you might be desperate for an internship or a graduate program, and, you're just going to say yes to everything. But at the end of the day, you have to be assessing the firm as well. Is this the right fit for me? Are they going to give me what I want from a sort of experience as well? That's also important to have. But that's just a quick sort of that's my sort of section, and I think I'll pass it over to Sarah, who can talk to you through technology.
Thanks, AMAR. Hi everyone. I'm really excited to speak to you today. My name is Sarah, and I work in technology in DWS. So first of all, I would love to know how many of us here are actually studying IT or computing at the moment. So I think there's a poll coming up. If you see it, it'd be great to see how many people are actually studying it. This could be in like BTech, GCSE, A-level. If you are studying it, it'd be great. So I see a few people coming in. Okay. So there's a few of us. If you're doing that, that's absolutely amazing. And I'm here today to not only talk to those people who are taking or thinking about a career in tech, but also those who aren't. So, I mean, if you asked me like 3 years ago, okay, what would someone, working in tech look like? What would they do? And I would love if you could picture that too. And if you asked me that question a few years ago, I would say, okay, this is someone who sits behind their desk, coding all day, 7 hours straight, no breaks, is extremely good at maths, doesn't speak to anyone. But no, I don't want to tell you that. That is not the case at all. And if you see, I'm here actually working in technology. So yeah, I'll tell you a bit about myself. So in the next slide. I work at DWS as a UX designer, but I never actually studied computing during my GCSE or my A-level, or even in school, or even in my undergraduate. So I studied accounting, economics, and business during my A-level. And like you can see, I didn't study computing then. And then I went ahead and after doing quite well in my A-level, I applied for a business and management degree. And during that year, I had an internship experience where I went to IBM. So I definitely say experience is great. If you could get any experience whilst you're studying, it's absolutely amazing, just to have and gain skills. So during that year at IBM, I realized how much I was, I didn't know much in tech at all. I was surrounded by people who are smart, very tech savvy and very intelligent. I thought, okay, I literally think I should apply for something in technology to get into it. But the thoughts came in my mind, is it too late? I don't know if it's too late because I'm doing a business degree. But as soon as I finished my placement and went back for my final year, I applied for a computer science master's, without no background in technology, which was really brave, really hard. But yeah, so it started off with having a boot camp. So you had like a 6-week boot camp in technology, which was coding in Java, making games, requirements gathering, all of that, and then designing it, creating games like a tic-tac-toe game. And it was really an intense boot camp. So that's how my journey started in technology. It was quite intense, it was very useful. And then during that master's, I studied a variety of different modules like software engineering, UX design, database. So these are all really important topics if you do want to go into a career in technology. And so if you go on to the next slide, yeah, if you like any of these below, maybe a career, sorry, the slide before that. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I just want to say that if you are someone who does like any of these, so if you like solving problems, explaining things to people, you like design, like helping your parents or grandparents using technology, enjoy learning new things, challenges, and like even making TikToks like myself, I can say that. So yeah, then maybe a career could be in technology. Most of us think that it only involves coding, but I can definitely tell you that this is not the case, and especially in DWS. So if you do answer to any of those as a yes, I would say you'd make a brilliant person in technology, because it's not just for people who sit in a dark room and not speak to anyone. Yeah. So there are a lot of different roles within technology. And I want to tell you a bit about what a career in technology could actually look like. So in the next slide, we have like all the different roles. And I guess when you think about a career in technology, most of us think of like Apple, Amazon, the big corporations. Social media is massive, Twitter, Instagram. So all of these people, they need people in technology, but it's actually beyond that. And like we've seen during the pandemic, how tech reliant we are, it's the tiniest companies that actually need it as well. And massive asset management companies like ours, DWS, definitely need people in technology. So any company, yeah. So you could be a software engineer, someone who writes code, a social media manager, someone who manages people and how many they can reach over the internet. You could be like a web developer, so someone who writes code, a website designer. Now I'm in UX design, so I try and make sure that what I'm creating, the application or like the website, is as friendly as possible for the user who is using it. You could be a game developer, data engineer, software architect, someone who designs how systems talk to each other, project manager, managing a project and making sure the budget and everything is aligned. You could be a scrum master. So there are quite a wide variety of different roles within technology. And when I landed a job in DWS, I actually realized the flexibility of having to try out a like a variety of different roles. So you could easily, you could actually try out so much within the company, which is absolutely great. And over to the next slide, I talk about my career in DWS. I started out as a graduate in October 2020, which was during the pandemic. It was quite scary having to do everything from home and not even meeting my team straight away. So that was a completely different change the way I joined. I think now most of us are quite used to being at home using Zoom, but at that point, starting your career all virtual is quite daunting, but it was quite good. You constantly need to learn a lot in technology. So I started my first rotation and it involved different technologies like Java, Servlet, Spring, Jenkins, using Jira, Git to store code. So the biggest thing I think in a career in tech is being able to learn constantly, because technology is always evolving, it's always changing. So being able to pick up a new technology and just learn it and be a good learner is something that's absolutely key. And being able to portray that during your free time, like, go ahead and learn how to code on the internet. There's so much out there, or there's so much you can do. And what I want to say is, during my interview at DWS, I remember I was given like a task to code. So it's not only about coding, but I also had a different task where it was like team building exercises, because that's very important. Being able to work as a team, they look at leadership skills, being able to communicate quite well. So all of that is really important. And mainly they're looking at you as a person. So what you are as a person, honest and integrity and all those different core values that we have. So during my second rotation, I went into more of a design role, which was, UX design. So here I was doing some requirements gathering, and then I'll take the requirements and turn them into user stories. And then we would code in React as well. And I had the opportunity to use Sketch, which is a completely design tool, a new design tool for me, but I've learned that. So this is to make like wireframes, visual designs, logos, graphic design. So there's quite a lot of opportunity if you have an interest in this as well. So if you're thinking how you could get into technology, there's quite a few different ways. So if we go on to the next slide, I have the first one as being doing a degree. So you could do a computer science degree, you could do something specific like engineering or anything like that. So, systems engineering, big data engineering degree. And I just want to say that I didn't actually do computing in A-level, but even that's something that's beneficial because it could lead to a career in tech. Also, computing courses and boot camps. So like I said, I did a boot camp while being in my master's. So that's another way you could get into technology, doing side courses. There's a lot of content out there. So, I mean, on YouTube, on W3 Schools, if you sit and try to learn Python, for example, there's a lot of hand-holding videos out there that teach you how to code from scratch. So that's quite good if you're interested. And then within internships and work experience, a lot of people, I have a friend who studied biology, but she's into technology now. So it's not only for people who have studied non-tech degrees. So you could go into technology. You could do an internship at DWS, for instance. Deutsche Bank offers it as well. And you could either do it while leaving school or while studying. So you don't exactly need a computer science degree to get into tech. And I just want to say that it's never too late. Lots of companies, especially DWS, need people from a range of different backgrounds, including yours. And in the last slide, I have here all the inspirational people and their careers in technology. So we have Deborah Barrett, who I find really inspirational. She's a vice president and chief compliance officer at Qualcomm. We have Elon Musk. I'm sure most of you know him. So he's the founder of Tesla and SpaceX. And interestingly enough, we have Hedy Lamarr, who invented Wi-Fi. But I've actually left that little picture down there because that person could actually be you on the fourth image. So if you are considering a career in technology, definitely do think about it. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. I've seen some questions that have been popping up in the chat box, which I've responded to in writing. I'm not sure if people are able to ask questions via audio, but happy to take any further questions if anyone has any.
I've got a question for Sarah, actually. Quite interested. Did you want to go into technology in asset management in particular and sort of financial services, or were you just interested in tech? Or was it something about asset management that appealed to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So like I said, when I was applying to different places, I wasn't only looking at asset management companies, but when I worked at IBM, I had some experience doing some asset management work because during my internship, I worked as I did a finance role in asset management. So I had a little bit of knowledge in that field. So I was quite looking, when it came to DWS, I was really excited to be working in like an asset management company. But so from my side, I was looking at asset management companies, but not all of them I did. So I did a few interviews like with Deloitte and one or two with other companies.
Okay, thank you guys. I can't see any more questions coming through the chat box, and I'm guessing you're probably not able to ask them through kind of video-based or voice technology. So unless anyone has anything else, I'm going to say thank you all for attending. Thank you, AMAR and Sarah, for sharing your experiences. Hopefully it's kind of opened some of your eyes up to the possibilities of a career within asset management. And just thank you all for your time.
Thanks a lot, Sophie.
Thanks a lot.